Audio is off. Where do I switch on audio? Mm-mm.
Are you guys able to hear me now? You guys can hear me? Okay, perfect. Okay, welcome to today's masterclass. Please remember that this session is just a theory session. So if you guys would like any other additional resources to help you, like practice questions or case studies, those kinds of things, you can email me and I will send through some practice questions for you guys. Okay, so this is for if you guys have any issues with theory and you would like me to address something or go through something again. We only have 2 hours, so you'll find that I am going to speed through it. But at the end of the session, if you have any issue with any concept or any section, then just let me know and we'll go through it, or I will send you the slides, or you can stay after the session and we can chat as well. Okay, so let's get straight into it. Our first learning unit. Okay, I'm sure by now that you guys have familiarized yourselves with the content and have already started studying, hopefully. Okay, so our first learning unit involves operations management. Now, if we have to go through the basics of what exactly operations management is, it's basically, okay, so let's take our operations department, for example. Our operations department is made up of our transformation process. Okay, are you guys familiar with the transformation process? Okay, I hope that you are. Remember, your transformation is taking inputs, which can be your raw materials, it can be your capital, it can be information, all of those things, and putting it into a process or a system where it's now transformed into a finished product. Okay, so our operations manager is the management that facilitates this process. So it's management that will overlook the transformation of our materials into our finished product. Okay, so that's basically what operations management does. They also overlook quality control. They implement other control systems that help us monitor for any failures, any errors that we could encounter during this process as well. They also ensure that we have relevant equipment and technology to help with the conversion of these resources as well. Okay, so that is what operations management does. That is why we need them. So as you can see with this slide as well, basically they are there to ensure that everything is being done correctly, that we are sticking to our performance objectives, that we are being efficient and effective. Okay, so what that means is that we are utilizing our resources effectively. So think about if you had a business and you have just bought resources, you would want to plan those resources so that you don't finish them too quickly, right? Because you want this process to be an ongoing process. You want to continuously produce products. So you don't want to finish your resources because think about when you place an online order and how long it takes to get to you. So in business, the concept is similar. If you wait till your resources are finished completely, when you place that order again, there will be a delay in production. So operations management is there to ensure that this process is facilitated well and that we do not run out of resources, that production is running smoothly, that we are increasing productivity, okay, that we are meeting customer demands, that we are keeping production also at a high. Remember, we have to keep our consumers motivated, sorry, our employees motivated so that they would actually meet our performance objectives. So that's also an important part of operations. Okay, I hope you guys are following so far. Some principles that we have to go through. So remember, operations management is always evolving. It's always aiming to do better, always aiming to meet performance objectives, to become more efficient, more effective. And with that, there are certain principles that we follow. Okay, so here we have 12 principles. Now, it is hard to memorize or to know all of these principles off by heart. So I would suggest know a good handful of these principles so that when you are asked about them, you have a clear understanding of what they are, or at least learn keywords in each principle so that you are familiar with what they are. So to quickly go through some of the principles, um, this is just 4 out of the 12, and we're still going to get to the rest. Okay. So the first one is understanding what consumers want. Now, if you remember from your marketing module in first semester, understanding what consumers want is an integral part of any management in a company because essentially we are producing products to sell to consumers. So we want to produce something that they actually want. And because operations management deals directly with the transformation of our goods, we want to ensure that we correctly identify the needs and wants of consumers so that we can supply to that demand. Okay, so that's what it means when we say we want to team up with consumers. So we want to understand them. And from getting research from consumers, we put that into the transformation process. So this information also serves as an input. Okay, it's information. Also, operations managers ensure that there's improvements, continuous improvements in their products. Now, remember, the external environment is always changing. If you think about yourself as a consumer, your wants and needs are also continuously changing. Okay, things that you see on social media influences the things that you buy. COVID, for example, was influencing the things that we buy. And this has a direct impact on the demand. So sometimes our demand fluctuates based on these different trends in the external environment. So it's the duty of the operations manager to ensure that we are monitoring these changes in demand and we are also improving on our systems and our processes so that we can effectively meet this demand. Okay, because we want to also provide consumers with better quality, better products, and that's why sometimes you see just basic products. If you go to the supermarket, you'll see that they sometimes have new packaging. The product is the same, but maybe the packaging has changed. So they want to continuously stay in alignment with what consumers expect. If you think about how Woolworths has changed to the shopping bags instead of packets now, so again, they want to align themselves to the consumer market. So what do consumers expect from them, and how can they improve their systems to effectively respond to those demands? Okay, that was the next one. Also, we incorporate our lower level employees in the decision making. Okay, so sometimes this is beneficial because when we involve other aspects or other levels of management in our decision making, we arrive at decisions quicker. We also have more perspectives, more opinions, diverse thinking. All of these things play a part in having better decisions for strategy planning. So if you want everyone to understand and to feel involved in the transformation process, asking for their input is a requirement as well. Okay, so this is just to get everyone on board and to unify our purpose, to align everybody's expectations. So apart from researching our customer market, we also research our competitive market. So we also want to know who are we competing against. And this is also an integral part of the transformation process because you have to understand your competitors to know how and what to produce so that you can actually gain your competitive advantage. Okay, imagine if you didn't know who your competitors were and if you were just producing products, just it was purely a production orientation, you most likely will not be able to meet the targets that you are aiming for. So knowing your competition allows you to produce better products that are better than that of your competition. Okay. We have also operations adhering to the manufacturing process and activities that ensure that changes in our product development are not like they are in alignment with our goals, our expectations, our objectives. Okay, so we want to ensure that we are not falling off of our strategic plan, that we are still going according to our plan, our objectives, and this requires a lot of focus. Okay, so that is also something that operations management will govern. Also, like I said in the previous slide, resources are so important, and we need to ensure that we are preserving our resources and using them wisely. So, organizing our resources so that we don't deplete them is a vital aspect of operations management. We also have investing in our human resources. So, this is speaking to the employees that are working in our company. We want to satisfy them. In the previous slide as well, I mentioned how we want to keep motivating them. We want them to be productive. And in order for them to be productive and to feel motivated, is for us to provide them with either the training or the rewards. Okay, think about if you were working in a company and if you were offered a reward for completing a task on time. It's motivation, it enhances motivation. So, in order for us to reach our performance expectations with our human resources, we need to provide them with all of these different things: rewards, recognition, training. Training is very important as well because employees need to know how to execute a job if they're going to execute it successfully, right? So, if we don't train them, this could actually have the opposite effect in our operations management, and we may not get the desired outcome because imagine you're doing a task that you have no knowledge on or very little knowledge on. You may not be able to execute that to the best of your ability. So, training programs, leadership programs, whatever we need to invest in our human resources so it can better our processes. Okay. Maintaining our equipment. So, again, equipment, machinery, all of these things that allow us to execute our transformation process efficiently and effectively, that needs to be maintained. Okay, machinery is very important. Ensuring that we have the proper people on our in our business to check up on machinery. If it breaks down, do we have someone that can come and assist us? Um, Sometimes businesses will replace their machinery and equipment after a certain amount of years. So the maintenance of that needs to also be looked up on. So that is also a task of operations. We also have looking at more simple and flexible machinery. So when it comes to operations management, remember costs are already at a high. Okay, we have a lot of costs that we encounter, our human resources, our research, our physical resources that we're using. So when it comes to equipment and machinery, we don't want to purchase something that is only going to last us a couple of months. We want to be wise, we want to be strategic, we want to get machinery that can be multifunctional. So, for example, I don't know if you guys have ever watched How It's Made. If you ever have to go watch that, you'll see like in the production of certain products, you'll see there's a machine that will do two or three things for a product. That's what multifunctional means. It means we don't have several different uh, equipment and machinery that is doing one task at a time, but we have maybe one machine that is doing multiple tasks at the same time, which cuts costs. And it also makes our processes more efficient, which means our lead time is going to be faster. And that is a competitive advantage. So, all of these things, do you see how it is a snowball effect? So, if we just have one thing, it kind of leads to the efficiency and effectiveness of the next step and the next step and the next. Okay, so simple equipment is sometimes the best, and it's just more efficient overall. Operations management is also there to ensure that equipment is working efficiently. And remember, we can't solely rely on equipment. We need both equipment and human resources. But we also have equipment there because there are some things that humans cannot do efficiently and effectively. Okay, or maybe not in the fastest time that we need them to do it. And in order to reduce the human element error, we have our operations that comes in to ensure that equipment is able to do that. Okay, um, almost there. We are at number 11. Operations management also comes in to minimize the number of processes and activities to provide the consumer with our goods more quickly and in the fastest time. So think about some of the trends that are going on. Like if you think about the Stanley Cup, for example, and how quickly that trend just took off. Some businesses wanted to make cheaper alternatives. Now, imagine if those businesses waited too long. Maybe the production time was over a year. That's way too long to get your product out into the market, and their competitors probably did it in way less time. We want to avoid that. We want to be the first in the market when it comes to our competition. If we see like there's an opportunity and we want to produce a product to meet those demands and meet the timing of that trend, we want to ensure that our flow time is exceptional. And that's where operation comes in. If you have too many processes, if you have too many systems, too many different machines doing different things, it's going to add to your production time, which is what we want to cut in half. Okay, so remember, if we are able to decrease our production time, our products will reach the market faster and quicker, and this is where our competitive advantage lies. Okay, so that is also something that's very, very important in operations, and it's one of the performance objectives. We also want to cut the setup time. So this involves providing support for our different processes and activities. So anything in our operations design, anything that we need to like put together, we need to cut that setup time. Okay, so if we can assist a process or if we can get a machine to run faster or to run like more efficiently, or adding support to that. So maybe putting human resources and a machine of some sorts. This is also going to help cut up that setup time. Okay, so these are our basic, and there's four more. I hope you guys are following so far. I don't expect you guys to memorize and know every single one of these off by heart, but know the basis of it. Know just what some of these are. And even through the way that I'm explaining it to you, that's good enough to know it in that way. So to just know briefly, like cutting down the production costs, cutting down systems, cutting down processes, ensuring that our machine and equipment is efficient. We also have a something known as a pull system. So this system increases the workflow, okay, and also reduces waste by producing only what customers are demanding or what they want. Now, this ties into looking at supplying to consumers and doing that research, finding out what they want. Because if we were based on a production orientation, if you remember this from first semester, it would be very hard to ensure that we are actually meeting demand. So, with the way that we are operating and the way that we are conducting our transformation process, we need to ensure that we're not overproducing, but also that we're not underproducing. And that is why understanding our demand is really important. Okay. If we overproduce, we increase our waste, and that's not good. But if we underproduce, we also don't target all our consumers that are demanding our product, which is also not good. So the pull system allows us to monitor what consumers are actually wanting, what is the demand on that product, and then supplying directly to that demand. So this is going to drastically reduce your waste. We also have the total quality control. So remember, quality control is important, especially in operations. So this is going to ensure that our resources that we are using in our transformation process is the best. Okay, so we are using high quality materials. We are using processes that are efficient, effective. We have people involved in this process that are trained, that know what they're doing. They have the right knowledge, they have the right skills. All of this contributes to good quality. And if our products are good quality, the end result will be good. We'll increase our sales. Okay. And we can even have repeat consumers, which is also an end goal. So quality control is a must in our operations. And this is also facilitated by our operations management. We also have to fix causes. So this entails identifying the root of the problem. Okay, now this is important because when it comes to operations, and because you are using machinery and equipment and a lot of processes, there can be a lot of problems that incur. So instead of just fixing it temporarily, you want to get to the root of it so it doesn't delay your production any further. So operations, you'll find that they come in to help manage this. So any problems that you have, anything that's not working correctly, anything that's not adding to the efficiency of things, we come in to get to the root of that problem. And then we also have something known as visibility management. So our operations managers also need to encourage employees to work towards a certain goal and to share this information with the broader market. Okay, so remember we have goals of um, high performance, high productivity. So just to manage the people that are working for us and ensuring that they are actually sticking to our targets and to ensure that they are aligned, or whatever they are doing is aligned to our business goals and objectives. That is very important to us. So those were just our basic, just in our basic principles of operations management. I hope that made sense. Again, I don't expect you guys to know every single one, but at least if you try to um, just understand them, like make a summary for yourself and just learn keywords from each one. Okay, and that should help you remember it if you are asked about it. Okay, so again, we've discussed quite a lot about operations management. So these are some characteristics that also tie into that. And you'll see a lot of these are very similar to what we just spoke about. So they're very similar to the principles as well, like understanding consumer needs, which we know now why that is so important. Understanding the organization's financial performance. So remember, budgeting is very, very important. And if you move into like the finance aspect, if you pursue a BCom, you'll see why budgeting is so important. We don't want our business to run into debt. And it can be very easily, it can go that way very easily if we don't monitor our resources, if we don't monitor our expenditure, if we don't monitor our systems. Okay, so we need to understand where our financial limitations lie. And this is going to help us to actually manage ourselves and to also make those resource orders. It's going to help us manage our human resources, all of those things as well. Even machinery and equipment. We need to know how much we have to invest in good machines and good equipment. So that's why we need to understand our financial performance and our budget. Okay. Delegating is also a huge part of operations. So this just looks into giving tasks to others, giving them responsibility. This is going to allow for us to get things done a lot quicker. And then motivating our team, like I said in the previous slide as well, we want to ensure that our team is in high spirits. Okay, they're productive, they are happy to be working, they're motivated, because this is going to help us with our productivity rate, and it's going to help us produce our products in the quickest time possible, which is our goal. Okay, so that is why this aspect is so important. We also want to keep reminding uh, our human resources of what our objectives are, what our vision is, what our mission is. If they know what these things are, they would better work towards it. Okay, so operations management will keep reinforcing those things. Standards as well is also very important. So thinking about your performance standards, your productivity standards, those are so important for us to understand and also to ensure that we're sticking to them. Like your business will set a performance objective. So, for example, you want to manufacture a certain number of products within a certain time frame. This is a performance standard because you are expecting to have a certain amount of this produced in a certain time. The way to monitor this is to see if you are actually meeting those targets every single time. If not, and you find that you're taking longer to do it, then maybe something in your process needs to be changed. Maybe something is not as efficient as you need it to be. So you need to go back and assess that. And it's always a process of continuous improvement because we want to keep getting better and better. A production system is not always perfect. There's always going to be imperfections, but that is why operations management comes in. They come in for the continuous improvement of our systems. We also have creating a positive learning environment. Okay, so in every department, actually, you should be giving feedback to your team members on how they can improve, what they can do better, how they can perform. This is also going to contribute to exceptional performance objectives. Okay, looking at our staff as well as valuable assets in this process and maximizing our staff utilization. So remember, everyone has special skills, special knowledge when it comes to this department. So we need to utilize that. We need to use it effectively in our transformation process and delegate and give people tasks that they are able to accomplish and accomplish also with a very good performance standard. Communication is also very effective, and you'll see as well like um, communication is a whole chapter, and you'll see why communication is very important. But here in operations, it's also extremely important because communicating with staff and other management as well as consumers when you're doing your research, that's going to bring in feedback, that's going to bring in more information for us to put into our transformation process. Okay, and then, like I was saying, just looking at your performance standards, how is our staff members performing? Are they actually doing things on time? Are they actually meeting the goals and objectives that we are setting? Okay, that's also an important aspect. So those are just some characteristics. They also tie in with the principles of operations management. Have a good understanding of what those are and just what the purpose of operations management is. And if you need guidance on that, just go to your learning outcomes. Look at those learning outcomes and learn according to your learning outcomes. Okay. This next section that we're looking at is so easy peasy, but of course, please know the difference between a good and a service. I know that you guys do know this, so I'm not going to get too deep into it, but this is like a short question in a test or an exam. So it's like it can be a multiple choice, it can be a true and false, it can be to give like a short definition. Okay, so know what a good is. A good is something you can touch, you can feel, you can taste. It's something you can buy and take home with you. Okay, and then a service is something that you cannot take home with you. So you cannot take your haircut home with you. Okay, once you are at the salon, they cut your hair, they provide you that service, and then you're done. So it does require you and the person providing the service to be in the same place at the same time. With the good, you can take it, you can go home, and you can enjoy it at home. But with the service, you cannot do that. So ensure that you know the difference between a good and a service. Okay, and then just a few like pictures just to show you difference between goods and services. So a car wash, for example, will be a service. A bakery, they can be both a good and a service. A salon, a service. Spa, good and a service. And factory, Willy Wonka's factory is they do have goods and yeah, they produce goods, so it will be a good. Okay, so we are finally at the transformation model. Um, know what your transformation model looks like, okay, and know how to draw it, know what it entails. So this is what our model looks like. We have our inputs, we have our transformation process, and we have our outputs, okay? This is a basic model. So we're going to break it down into each one. So what does each one contain? Our inputs. Our inputs are made up of two things: transformed resources and transforming resources. Okay, our transformed resources is there to create a specific good or a service during the transformation process. So these are things like the materials that we're using, because we're using this to that's the main aspect of our transformation process. We're using this to create the end product. Information as well, we put it into our transformation process. Remember, this is our market research. This is looking at consumers, looking at what they want. So we're taking now, we're putting it into our transformation process. This is also feedback that we get from the market, put it into our process. And then consumers as well, feedback from consumers also gets put into the transformation process. All of these things is what is going to help us create the best product, a product of high quality, a product that is meeting the demands of consumers. Our transforming resources, they're used in the transformation process. They're used to help facilitate the transformation process. So this is our staff. This is the facilities that we have. Okay. The staff, they are not a part of the end result. So they're not a transformed resource, but they do help with the creation of the product. So they do help in like ensuring that everything's running smoothly in our transformation process, etc. So they will be a part of our transforming resources. Okay, and then our actual transformation process. Now, our transformation process is where the product is being made. So again, I'll refer to how it's made if anyone's ever seen it. If you haven't, I recommend you go see it. Okay, So it just shows you how products are being transformed, and that's exactly what a transformation process is. It is your physical resources that are getting transformed. So the physical appearance of it is changing. Sometimes the like the ownership of materials are changing as well. So you're taking it from a supplier, you're putting it into this transformation product, you're giving it a whole new identity, a whole new look, you're giving it features, you're giving it new meaning, new benefits, all of those things, and then it's getting sold at the end. Okay, so the transformation process does have different categories. Um, there are four categories that we can look at. So it can occur in any of these industries or any of these categories. So we have the manufacturing industry, and that's like the most common and the one that we usually refer to. So this is our like manufacturing like workshops and our like facilities where we manufacture our products. So the creation of goods, for example, a smartphone. We have a service. So this, like a transformation process, can be in a service as well, and it's basically just the service that is being carried out. So when you're transforming a service, it's just right from the start of how the service is actually being carried out for consumers. Okay. Supply. So we do have the transfer of ownership of goods. So from like if you guys our next chapter is supply chain. But if you remember, we have to focus on where the products are going after it's manufactured. So is it going to a retailer? Is it going to a wholesaler? So that is also an aspect or a category of our transformation model. And then we also have the transport, which is the movement of our materials, which also is an aspect of our transformation. Okay, so where are our products going? Where's the end product actually going? And then the output, okay, again, very easy. It's the finished good that we have just manufactured. Outputs can also be the toxic waste. So remember, if we have produced too much, sometimes that incurs a lot of waste. Sometimes it's just products that have defects or that have a lot of errors that we are tossing out, or sometimes it's also just like the additional waste from our actual process. So like packaging and those kinds of things that can be toxic waste. Okay, so that is your output. That is what comes out of our transformation process. And then the feedback is what is used to close the loop. So feedback takes place at the end, usually when a product is done, it's on the shelves, or not even then, sometimes just before that. So when your product is actually done and you as a operations manager or even as a staff member, you look at the product and you see there's some defects to this, the design is not what you thought it would be, um, and there's a lot of problems with the functionality of the product, you put that information back into the transformation process so that you can do better. So the whole purpose of feedback is to bring awareness to anything that has gone wrong in the transformation process and to now strategize again, plan again, and put it back into the transformation process with the intention of having a better outcome. So feedback is there to improve. It's there to ensure the continuous improvement and also just to have better quality every single time. Okay, so feedback is what makes this continuous. It keeps the cycle going. Some decisions that we have to make when it comes to being an operations manager is the following. So remember, this also is very similar to the principles that we were looking at and also the characteristics. So don't feel overwhelmed looking at this and also looking at the other things that we've just gone through. It all ties in together. Okay, so if you think of it that way, it will be so much easier to study. So usually our operational decisions relate to the following. So the design of our goods and services. Okay, so looking at, and remember, these are the the strategic decisions that we have to make. So it's things that we plan, it's things that we need usually a strategy for. Um, and when we strategize, it means we have a plan of action and we have a goal and we have an objective. So the design of our goods, that falls into it as well. Thinking about how we can optimize our resources, how can we actually uh, align to quality expectations, and how can we maximize our resource usage and all of those things. Managing our quality as well, like again, how can we ensure that all our processes, all our policies are actually in line with what consumers expect. Okay, that is also a main one. Our process and our capacity. So looking at our processes, looking at how efficient our processes are. You can even look at your human resources in this regard and look at how your human resources are performing and whether or not that is meeting your performance objectives, and yeah, and just being efficient and effective as well. The location, so looking at where your warehouses are, where your storage units are. Do you have infrastructure and all the costs that are involved? Now, think about efficiency in this aspect as well. So if you have a manufacturing plant in PMB, would you have your warehouse in Durban? It doesn't make sense. So obviously, you would want to have it in close range so that you can store your products there as soon as it's done, or it's just easier for you to actually transport your products once the manufacturing process is done. This is also going to cut costs. Okay, so being more efficient with where you are placing each um, like where's everything laid out in terms of your house, your warehousing, your infrastructure, how's your distribution channel going to work as well. All of that takes a lot of planning and a lot of strategy. The layout, okay, so the layout of everything, just you can look at this in the wider spectrum, and you can look at your layout being like where's your warehousing as well, and also looking at your distribution channel, or you can even look at your layout in terms of your physical space where you are manufacturing your products, looking at the most efficient and effective way for your product to go through the transformation process. Okay, because that in itself is also going to help cut costs. We have our human resources and our job design. So human resources is an expense. Okay, so if we don't have the right people working in this department, we have to cut those costs, or we have to actually see how we can maximize our human resources and use their skills and their capabilities in our manufacturing process. So looking into our human resources, looking at what jobs they are doing, um, at their capabilities, all of that is also a decision that our strategic management has to look into. Supply chain. Okay, so you guys all know supply chain. It's looking at the way we are going to integrate our supply chain into this. So where's our product going once we have um, manufactured it? Inventory management, so controlling our inventory, ensuring that we have enough resources and also enough inventory at the end to meet our consumer demand. That's very important. Scheduling, looking at just planning everything. Um, it can be your facility, it can be your resources. If you remember from project management as well, scheduling is important. Like if you look at production as a project, you have to schedule your activities, you have to schedule your tasks so you can meet that end goal. And then the maintenance. So this requires us to just make sure that our processes are efficient, and also that if we have technology, equipment, all of those things, that we are able to well maintain them. Okay, and then a short little piece is the integration of our business functions. So remember, it's so important for us to integrate all our business functions, and this relates to finance, marketing, human resources, and operations. Now, these are the four main functional departments. Of course, there are other functional departments, but usually when you start off a business, these are the four functional departments that you think of immediately because, of course, we need a finance function. They're responsible for our funding, our budgeting, controlling of our financial resources. Of course, we need a marketing function. They are there for the marketing communication. They are there to look into our consumer market and ensure that we are reaching and understanding our consumer demands. We need human resources. Okay, we need that department because they are responsible for controlling and recruiting our human resources. And of course, our operations function, which is our transformation function. All four of these are very, very crucial for us to begin with. And to integrate all of these business functions with each other is going to also be um, exceptional for achieving a competitive advantage. Now, how is this possible? So, if you look into finance, for example, operations will have to go to finance for budgeting. Okay, so if we want to buy resources, we'll have to go to finance. How much money do we have in our budget? How much can we actually spend? Finance will give us feedback. If we are done with our products and we now want to market them, marketing and operations will get together. They will exchange information on how best we can create brand awareness, we can market our products, all of that. Human resources is there to bring the right people on board. So if operations needs a maintenance person, they go to human resources. If marketing needs someone from human resources will recruit that person. So each one of these functions need each other, and the exchange of information between all of them is what keeps them integrated. Okay, so just remember that it's cross-functional. All of these are cross-functional, which means they function best when the exchange of information is taking place. And we need that. We need that to happen for more efficient and effective processes. Okay, so we're almost at the end of operations. We are going to look at operational efficiency. Now, remember, I've been talking to you about reaching those performance objectives, reaching the productivity and efficiency. Here we are going to actually calculate for productivity and efficiency to ensure that we are actually where we are supposed to be. And this is also going to help us just know if we have to improve in anything. So we have productivity. Now, both of these definitions, they can be confusing. So if we have to break it down, productivity is the rate at which goods are produced or tasks are completed. Okay, so the purpose of this is to determine the output of a process. Okay, so always remember that it's to determine the output of a process. Efficiency, on the other hand, is used to measure our actual output produced by a specific process against a set standard. That is how you can differentiate between the two. Efficiency, there's always a set standard before. Productivity, we are looking at the rate at which goods are being produced, and also it's to determine the output of a process against our inputs. But you'll see sometimes when you're asked about this, it can be a bit confusing because they sound very similar. So always look into efficiency. And if you see that it is measured against a set standard, you know immediately it's efficiency. Okay, now there are two formulas here. They're not very difficult formulas. We use our outputs and we use our inputs. Okay, so if we look at productivity first, productivity, like I said, we are measuring how or the rate at which goods are being produced or even tasks. So if they have to ask you a question, so they want you to calculate the productivity and they use hours, for example. So if we have cars, a factory produces cars. Okay, so we have our cars, which is our outputs. The labor is our inputs. It's what we're putting into it. Okay, the calculation here will always be outputs divided by your inputs. That will give you your answer. So productivity is always equal to outputs divided by inputs. If our output is the car, it will be 10,000. If our inputs is labor, 10,000 divided by 50,000, and that will give you in hours the rate. Okay, so how many cars are produced per that hour? That is what your productivity rate will be. So always remember outputs over inputs. You want a ratio, you want a rate. Okay. If they are asking you to calculate, say they give you another question and it's in rands, all you have to do is multiply each one by the rand that they give you. So it's the exact same formula. You'll still have outputs over inputs. You are just multiplying each one. So 10,000 cars times 20,000 rand, because that's the rand associated with the cars, divided by 50,000 times 12 rand an hour, okay, because that's associated with our labor. That will give you an answer in rands, okay? So always remember, productivity is the rate at which goods are being produced. So the formula will always be outputs divided by inputs. Efficiency, on the other hand, because we want to measure an actual output, so what the output actually is against what we thought it would be, or the standard that we initially set. Okay, so we want to see how efficient are we actually being. The formula here looks at our actual output divided by our input times 100. Okay, so if you think about it, the calculation is almost the same as our previous one. Actual output divided by actual input times 100, or times, yeah, 100 for your percentage. Okay, so times 100%. So if we have to look at this example, and these are examples that are in your textbook as well. So go through the example to familiarize yourself with this type of question. So a factory that produces cars bought a new car manufacturing machine. Okay, so a new car manufacturing machine has been bought and has the capacity to produce 12,000 car frames a week. Okay, so that is what you bought the machine at, and this is how much it has the capacity to produce. The factory invests in training employees and uses, the best quality material. When the output of the car manufacturing machine was measured, it was found to produce 15,000 car frames per week. Okay, so now we have to measure the efficiency of this. So what was the actual output? The actual output, so what we actually got out of this machine, was 15,000, because we used the machine and that is what the output was. But initially, when we bought the machine, the actual input of it was 12,000. So when we got this machine, we were told the capacity was 12,000. That was the input. But when we actually used it, it produced 15,000. Okay, so the actual output is 15. So we take 15,000 divided by 12,000. Okay, we calculate that first. Then you times it by 100% to get a percentage. Okay, so our efficiency will therefore be 125%. That is how efficient this machine is. Okay, so always remember, when we are referring to efficiency, we are asked usually to put it into a percentage. So yeah, this calculation and these formulas are in your textbook. Just know what they are, know what the formula is, and know how to identify your outputs and your inputs, because they will always give those to you. You just need to identify which is which so that you don't get confused. Okay, so know a definition for productivity, know how it is different from efficiency. Okay, again, productivity is the rate at which goods are produced or a task is completed. Efficiency, we are looking at what the actual output of anything It can be anything. What is the actual output of it um, by a specific, against a specific standard? Okay. Does someone have a question? Yep. If you guys do have a question, just type it in the chat box, and then at the end of the session, we can go through it. Okay? Okay, I hope that's simple enough. Please don't panic or stress out about this. Just know your two formulas and know definitions for them and know how to pick them out of a question. So if they had to ask you for an output, you should know what an output is. If they had to ask for an input, know what an input is so that you can put it into your calculation. Okay. Okay. So also something that gets asked a lot is some trends in operations management. So I'm going to go through this very quickly because um, it's also a bit simple. So we have things like our fourth industrial revolution. Fourth industrial revolution is the development of our technology, of our AI functions, all of those things. That is evolving quite rapidly, and because of that, we need to incorporate this into our system. So imagine if businesses never evolved alongside technology, we wouldn't be as efficient and effective as we are today. So the fourth industrial revolution is a trend in operations, which means we are adapting to it and we should involve it in our processes to become more efficient. Employee empowerment as well is also a big trend in operations management, especially in today's age where employee wellness and looking after our employees has become uh, more like it's been brought to our attention a lot more. So, employee needs and their rights are not being suppressed. Organizations are actually taking care of their employees. So, there's laws, there's policies, all to protect employee empowerment. And that's also why we need human resource management because they are also there to protect our employees. A global focus. So a lot of companies are taking their businesses into international markets. That is also a trend that is likely to happen with the companies. Eventually, as you grow, your production either goes into international markets or your business goes into international markets. Supply chain partners, again, as you know from your supply chain learning unit, supply is what comes after our manufacturing process. So of course, there's going to be partnerships that are going to develop due to our supply chains. Okay, so that's also a trend that is highly looked into in our operations and looking how we can effectively strategize around that to have the most value in our supply chain because obviously you want to send your product along a supply chain that is going to put your product in the market in the shortest lead time possible. Okay, so you can gain that competitive advantage. So creating partnerships of value is very important. Product development. Okay, so again, we have the evolution of technology that makes this very easy for us to be more efficient. So new technology is allowing us to create and produce products in the shortest time, which is perfect for competitive advantage. So if we want to increase our productivity, increase our efficiency, we want to get new technology. Okay, just-in-time production refers to looking at consumer demands and supplying to those consumer demands in the right timing. So we don't want to wait too long. We don't want to wait too long, and we also don't want to be short of supply. So just-in-time production means we are producing just the right amount and also within a certain time so that we are addressing demands and we are also on time in the consumer market. Green production is also something that we cannot stray away from. So green production is where we are now slowly shifting into. So a lot of companies you'll see are manufacturing with clean practices. So either they are moving into more environmentally friendly products or they are taking into account like global warming, things like that. Like how can we produce better um how can we produce better products and those kinds of things. And then customized production with the rise in our competition. We know that we have to bring something unique and different into the market. So, what can we do to bring that uniqueness into the market? And remember, if your products are not unique, not any different, it's very saturated in the market, it's going to be very hard for you to stand out as a business. So, as part of operations, we look into making sure that we are giving consumers what they need, but also bringing something different into the market. Okay. And just like there's trends, there's also challenges that follow. So, just because we can go into global markets and just because we can actually adopt new technology and um, is so much more when it comes to strategy planning. We have a lot more opinions, a lot more open thinking, things like that. It can pose a problem. So, for example, with globalization, there's lots of things we have to look into, like who's our market in other countries? What are their likes and preferences? How can we be different to those competitors over in like international markets? And then we have the fourth industrial revolution again. So a lot of companies are finding it a bit difficult to adapt to emerging technology and AI. Okay, so as you know, AI is becoming quite massive, and a lot of companies are adapting to it, but also it's very, very costly to do so. And it's also, it can be costly to maintain. So it's not very easy to keep in line with all these trends. And because of that, it can be a challenge for operations management to stay in line with. Okay, so um, there is a little case study that I've attached to this, but what I'm going to do is I am going to, if you guys would like the case studies and if you want to practice and you like, just want to like just practice your answers and things like that, I'm going to leave my email so that you can reach out to me personally and I can send them to you so that you can work with them. And then if you have any questions about them, you can contact me and then we'll work through them together. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a 5-minute break before we do supply chain because that was a lot. So yeah, we'll come back at like maybe 6 minutes past or 8 minutes past one. Yeah, go grab some snacks or like a drink or something, and yeah, we'll take a short minute break, guys. Okay, guys, so I'm just gonna get started because we don't have too much time left. So I'm gonna go through supply chain quickly. Now, supply chain is basically this is what it looks like. So it is the flow of our products from the supplier all the way to the consumer. Okay, so this is a diagram of what a supply chain will look like. If you look at the start of it, so where we have our raw materials, obviously our raw materials come from someplace. So, for example, if it's coming from a farmer, you have a logistics system that will move the raw materials to a supplier. So, say you are in a business and you realize that you need certain materials. You will contact a supplier and a supplier will go off and get their raw materials. Okay. Now, all of this has logistic systems, and all that your logistic systems mean is that there's a flow of goods from point A and point B, and logistics deals with the transportation of those goods. So, from your raw materials, a supplier will get them through logistics. A supplier will then supply to a manufacturer, again through a logistics system, through transportation. The manufacturer, which we have just visited our transformation process, that's where that happens. The manufacturer will then send it off to a distributor. Our distributor is there to distribute our product either to another wholesaler or a retailer or whoever is the next person or the next participant in our supply chain. And that is moved then to the consumer or the final consumer. All of this is done via logistics. Now, a consumer will then receive those products. Either the consumer likes it or they don't. This will stimulate a demand. Once we have a demand, that demand goes back into the supply chain. So your demand will then start off this entire process again. So that is all that uh, our supply chain is. I'm so sorry. I don't know what just happened there. Um, Okay, so that is all that our supply chain basically is. And there is an example that is in your textbook that looks at bread. So that is one of the slides here, but I'm not going to go through that slide in too much detail because it is already in your textbook. But if you do want my slides, I can give them to you after and we can have a look at that. Okay, so I'm so sorry. This just went off. Um, I just want to get us back. Remember, if you have any questions, please do ask me in the chat box and I will get to them as soon as we are done. I hope that so far you guys are okay and you're understanding everything. And remember, the practice questions help so much. So again, if you need any of those, also, I will leave my email and then you guys can just ask me for those. Okay, so while they're changing, I'm just gonna speak about supply chain management. So the reason why we need supply chain management in supply chain is to facilitate this process because of course, if we have things like logistics, if we have things like the flow of our product, where's our product going? Is it going to a wholesaler? Is it going to um, straight to the retailer? We need to have information on this and we need to be able to strategically plan. Okay, so that's why our supply chain management comes in. They come in to help us plan all of these things. Okay, so again, that's what our supply chain looks like. Our supply chain manager is there to help facilitate the process. Now, this is the example that is in your textbook already. So it just shows you how wheat or the raw material of bread is then converted to bread. It's a nice little example of what it looks like. So read that in your textbook because it does help. But at the end of the session, if you want me to go through it, I can do that as well for you guys. Okay, so again, supply chain management looks at our planning and our controlling and our leading of the whole supply chain process, and it takes into account all of the factors involved in our supply chain, like our transportation, even operations is also involved, purchasing of certain things, all of that is involved in our supply chain. Now, there are 7 principles, again, very easy principles. I have a general understanding of what these principles are. Okay, so remember, supply chain is there to look into the most efficient and effective way to get our products to the end user. So, because of that, we have to look at customizing our logistics network, all of this in order to supply our consumer market in the fastest, most effective manner. Okay, so we're looking at customizing logistics networks, and that's our transportation. We're looking at understanding market needs. We're looking at understanding our supply chain design as well. So, how is our supply chain actually laid out? Like, who's involved in our supply chain? How can we manage these different participants in our supply chain? All of that. How can we incorporate technology? So remember, technology is a huge part of our management in today's age. Then we need to see how we can align to that. Okay, some reasons why our supply chain is super important is firstly, it boosts customer service. So we can, if we have a very, very good supply chain, very efficient, very effective, it can have a very positive result on our customers. So, for example, if we are manufacturing and then we are sending our products off and consumers are receiving it in the right time, in the right quality, everything's good, that's going to have very positive benefits for us. Also, supply chain management helps with reducing our operational costs. Remember, I told you there's a lot of costs that are involved in the manufacturing, in producing products and resources. All of this costs a lot of money. So anything that we can do to reduce our operational costs, we need to do it. So whether it's looking at how can we make our supply chain more efficient? How can we decrease any purchasing costs that we have? So, any resources that we need, how can we decrease those costs? How can we decrease our production costs? Okay. How can we also decrease the cost of the actual supply chain? So, the way that the supply chain is put together, the design of our supply chain. So, remember the price you see of a product on the shelves at the end is all is taking into account all the other costs involved in the supply chain. So if it goes to a wholesaler, that wholesaler is marking up that product. From that wholesaler, say it goes to another wholesaler, that product is also being marked up there. So by the time it reaches the final consumer, the product is very different from what the manufacturer's product is. So if we reduce our costs in our supply chain, it does make the end cost more affordable and also better for the consumer. And it also helps us to improve our financial position. So if we are monitoring our supply chain, if we're monitoring the flow of our products, we are essentially moving towards improving our financial position because we're focusing on leveraging our profit. We're focusing on optimizing the resources that we have and at the same time decreasing our costs involved. So if we are able to do this very efficiently, our financial position is going to improve. It's going to get better. So, for example, in the previous one where we're saying we're going to decrease some of our supply participants or find the most efficient supply design, that is going to help us with our financial position because the end price is not going to be as costly, which is going to contribute to our profit. Okay, so those are all aspects of what makes supply chain very efficient. Now, very quickly, I'm going to go through the four basic functions of our supply chain. Now, we have purchasing, we have operations, we have logistics, and we have integration management. So far, we've gone through operations and integration management. So I won't go in detail with those, but when it comes to purchasing, this is looking at our any goods that we are purchased. Now, these goods can be classified in different categories, and these are important for you to know. So you need to know what each category is and also a little definition about it. So what is it? So what is a raw material? What is a supplementary material? So a raw material basically is any resource or any material that goes through little to no transformation. So it can sometimes be found very naturally, or you put it through maybe one transformation process, but that's also very, very minimal. So raw materials like things like our coal, wheat, anything that maybe supplied from a farmer. Okay. Supplementary materials are materials that are used in our production process, but they're not generally a part of our finished product. So for example, it's anything that facilitates the machinery and equipment. So say it's gas, say it's water, cooling materials, or any liquids and stuff that actually help facilitate and make our processes better. Anything that's used in the machinery and equipment and all of those aspects. We have semi-manufactured products. So these are products that have already been through a transformation process at least one time. So they are semi-manufactured, they are semi-finished. So for example, it can be plastic foils. Now, plastic foils have already been through a transformation process to get to the plastic foil. And we take this and we put it through the transformation process again, maybe as packaging for a different product. Okay, so those are semi-manufactured products. We have components. So components are like pieces. So if you think about the word components, they're just little pieces that help us to build an end product. So you manufacture things in little parts, for example, like batteries or engine parts. If they are all combined and if they're all put together, this is what makes the end product. So you do get manufacturing plants that manufacture purely components, and then you get other businesses that manufacture their own components and they put them together to finish the end result. We have our finished products. So finished products, these are items that are purchased to be sold. So of course, it is your final product. Okay, that is a category. We have investment goods, capital equipment, all of that. These are equipment and properties. So they're not really consumed by consumers like very impulsively, um, or not like very often either, but it is still a category of goods. Okay, and then our maintenance, repair, and operating materials. These are all materials that are used also to help facilitate our transformation process. Okay, but it can also be used like in other things as well. Things like our cleaning supplies, printing paper, those kinds of things. And then our services, which is a category as well. So these are obviously activities that are carried out or service that is provided. And usually we have a lot of services in our operations process as well. So like if we have like any like maintenance repair guys or contractors, those kinds of things. Even security can be a service that is needed in business. So these are all our different categories of purchasing management. So please know what those categories are and what each one entails. Operations management, something that we've just been through. So operations, you know that we are concerned with producing products that meet the quality expectations of our consumers and also meeting the right demand. Within operations, we have two things that we look at. So we look at demand planning and demand forecasting. Now, the difference between the both. So forecasting, for example, forecasting is a prediction of what's likely to happen. So sometimes we use we start off sometimes with predetermined assumptions. which is basically just knowledge or facts or something that we have on a subject. Then we go ahead and we start forecasting. So we start to look at what is likely to happen. Think about the weather and think about a weather forecast. Okay, they always tell you it's likely to rain later. So they always start with information that leads them to believe that this is likely to happen later. Okay, now there's two techniques that we get here. We can get a qualitative technique and we can get a quantitative technique. Qualitative refers to more of a theory-based approach. So it's more like words as opposed to numbers. Quantitative is your numbers, it's your stats, it's your numerical values, that kind of thing. Usually in business, we incorporate both because it's much easier to explain. So if you had to use like a pie chart, for example, and then have a qualitative explanation of what is in the pie chart, so it helps us interpret it better. Okay, so you can have two of those techniques. So this is what forecasting is. Again, this is what a process looks like. Very simple. So we always start off with a purpose for our forecast. We look at a time frame because obviously we can't go forecasting forever and ever. It shouldn't take us like a whole year to arrive at something. I mean, it sort of depends on what you are forecasting, but if it's something that you need, like sales, for example, or you want to see your expected sales in the next month, it shouldn't take you very long because you need that information. So you need to have a time frame of when to end your forecast. Choosing a technique, so choosing whether you want it to be qualitative or quantitative. Also, just knowing um, like how you're going to collect this information, how you're going to analyze it. Okay, so all of those methods need to be identified. We make our forecast, so we finally say like, okay, we estimate that there's going to be a 5% increase in our sales this month, and we continuously monitor this because forecasts are likely to change. So if you think about the weather, does the weather ever stay the same according to the forecast? I mean, sometimes it does, but sometimes it doesn't. So sometimes it says it's likely to rain at 1 o'clock, and then sometimes it doesn't rain at 1 o'clock. So forecasts can change. It's not something that is like accurate that it will definitely happen, but it is what is likely to happen. So it does give us the ability to strategize around it. Like if something is likely to happen, we can always look at ways that to eliminate risk, to eliminate error. Demand planning, on the other hand, now I was I was telling you guys the difference. So forecasting is based on a predetermined assumption and it's what's likely to happen. Demand planning takes what's likely to happen. So it begins with the forecast. It takes the forecast and it looks at how can we plan. So how can we plan according to this forecast to either eliminate any risks or potential risks that could happen. But in the case of this, we are looking at how can we align production to meet demand. So for example, consumers have a specific demand. Maybe the participants in the supply chain have a specific demand. How can we align our production to meet that? Because remember, we don't want to oversupply, we don't want to undersupply. So the demand planning helps us stay on target. It helps us coordinate all our activities in the supply chain. It also helps us coordinate our activities in our operations, in our production process. Okay, so if we have a good idea of how much consumers want, what's expected in the market, we can better plan for it. So forecasting gives us that information, and demand planning allows us to plan according to that. Okay, so here are the steps for demand planning. We use some past sales data and we can sometimes work with consumers. Also, they will give us the feedback we need. So we can look at sales, like how much of a certain product consumers are buying. That will tell us that they actually like a product and if they're likely to come back. And then we can begin taking our forecasts and then planning with our forecasts. And we continuously re examine this data to keep it relevant. So we look at information we already have, we look at our forecasts, and we can start planning based on that. Okay, so just remember the two. Our forecast, it is what's likely to happen. Our demand planning takes what's likely to happen and allows us to plan ahead. Logistics management comes in. Remember, I told you with the whole supply chain, we have our logistics function that moves everything from one participant to the next. So it becomes the flow of materials from one aspect to the next. Okay, some objectives of theirs is also very similar to other departments as well. We always want to reduce our costs and maximize our profits. We want to ensure efficient flow of goods and services. The competitive advantage is there, and we want to keep it there, and we want to align it to the market. We also want to have really good communication channels, because if our products are moving throughout the supply chain, we need to stay in connection with our logistics management and also just inventory management as well. So where's our things getting stored? Is it being safe? Are products being handled correctly? And some activities that I'll just go through quickly is our network design. So looking at where's the location of our goods, where is our storage facilities, so that we can coordinate our logistics management activities. Logistics management also looks at order processing. So it looks at things like receiving products, handling it, filing it, recording it, all of those things, ensuring that products are delivered on time, that there's no delays, all of those things. So if you think about a nice one to think about is your Takealot delivery system that they have. They allow you to track your products. If you order from Shein as well, they have the Buffalo Logistics, and they're a logistics company that also allows you to monitor your products. When they come to deliver to you, they make you sign. Um, so all of that is a good example of order processing. Procurement also is another word for purchasing. So it's looking at sourcing our raw materials, or also if we had to think about right at the beginning of a supply chain, we have to source things from our suppliers. So it looks at those things. Handling of our materials, again, think about Buffalo Logistics and how they deal with our products, ensuring that it's handled well, there's good packaging on it. Inventory management looks at managing our inventory, making sure that there's no delays and there's a continual flow of products. Because if there's a delay with logistics, um, every other participant in the supply chain is going to be delayed. So to avoid that, we have to have good logistics management. Packaging and labeling is also an important aspect. So looking at now, remember when you get your package, if you've ever ordered online, you'll see like it comes with a whole packaging label and everything. That's also to help them just identify where packages are supposed to go, those kinds of things. Warehousing, so this refers to the storage, so where we're putting our inventory, the location of it, okay? Because if logistics has to go back and forth, that's not efficient and it's going to incur more costs. So the warehousing needs to be in close proximity, or at least in the direction that your logistics system is moving, so that you can reduce your cost factor. And then transportation, which we're going to look at next, is also a part. It's the main part. So we need transportation to help us move our products. Now, when it comes to transportation, we have different modes of transportation. So know your different modes of transportation. Like, for example, we have the road, so we can use vehicles. The advantage of this is we can go door to door. For example, Takealot. Everything is safe and it is efficient, because we can use different routes if we get stuck, or if we need an alternate, faster route, we can always redirect. The disadvantage of it is it can be costly if you think about fuel. Okay. Air travel. So moving things via an airplane, it's very fast. You can move things to a lot of different regions, places. However, sometimes there's limitations in terms of your materials. So sometimes you can't transport certain things, or it needs to be a specific weight, those kinds of things. So that can limit you. Moving things via ship. So again, it can load very big loads, which is very good because if you are a huge manufacturing plant and you have lots of supply, um, or especially if you're moving from one country to another, or even like just far distance places, this can be nice. However, the timing of this, it can be very slow. Like think about when you do order from Shein or Temu, it takes like 14 to like a month to arrive. So that can also be a delay. So if you want something fast, then this is not the right one. Pipeline, pipeline is very flexible, but mostly in terms of gases and liquids. So pipeline is like a pipe that's underground. And this allows us to move liquids and gases in a safe way and also very fast. Okay, there's no traffic, there's no restrictions here. However, pipes are not very flexible. So if you like have an issue at one end of the pipe, it's not like you can change a route. Okay, so someone would have to go and have to be maintenance and all of that. Did we look at railway? Yeah, railway as well. Railway trains also a very efficient way of moving goods because there's no traffic. You can also move very large amounts and quantities. However, um, it is a lot of money involved because there's a huge fuel consumption. Okay, so those are our different modes of transport. Now, there's a criteria that we follow. So whenever we're picking the mode of transport, we always look at what's the most cost-effective one. Also, can we depend on it? And also, what's the timing? So again, if you want something that is very cost-effective and you want that product as soon as possible, there like you have to look at which one would meet those needs. If you have the specific budget, also look at that. If you want something that's very dependable, like sometimes trucks, maybe you think it's not as dependable, sometimes you think airplanes are not that dependable, you look for one that best suits your needs. And then the last thing is integration management. Now, if you remember from the previous learning unit, when we looked at integration management, it means all the participants and all the functional departments are working together. Now, in this instance, we have the coming together of our purchasing, operations, and logistics. All three of those have to work together, which means all of their objectives need to be aligned so that we can successfully meet our supply chain objectives. And that is to deliver on time, to deliver within the right quantity, quality, all of those things. So integration management allows all of these processes to become smooth. Now remember, if there's one delay in, like say, operations is delayed, the whole supply chain is delayed. If there's something delayed in purchasing, the whole thing is delayed. So we need to ensure purchasing, operations, and logistics can work together, can exchange information, there's good communication between all of these functions in order for our supply chain to be very effective. So that's where what integration management deals with. Okay, so it's just ensuring that all of these aspects in the supply chain are working together. The last aspect of supply chain is looking at just the future of supply chain. So where are we headed now in terms, like I'll just go very quickly through some of these. So in terms of digitalization, we know very similar to operations, the digital world, technology, all of those aspects give us the ability to redesign a lot of our processes and approaches. So especially for logistics, for example, um, it also allows for communication to be a lot more effective and faster, and especially in a competitive environment where we need things like fast responses, things like that. Digitalization makes it possible. Okay, reducing our costs, um, those kinds of things. So when demand increases, we know supply does as well. So we obviously have more production, we have more that goes through our supply chain, which means our transportation costs can skyrocket. So eventually that could happen for businesses. So if we know this is likely to happen, we have to plan for it. So we have to plan like navigating ourselves through that and ensuring that we don't exceed certain cost factors. And then also looking at just like cloud computing. So the things that we store online, are we protecting our intellectual property? Are we protecting our software? Is it reliable? Is it trustworthy? Like we need to look at things like that. We need to look at like the overall, like are we shifting towards protecting and safeguarding all of our information online. And that also ties into like the security, because a lot of companies do get hacked. A lot of companies, sometimes they don't want their private information to be leaked in any way. So we're looking at the protection of our intellectual property. Okay, because in the future, if digitalization and if technology keeps improving the way that it does, there's so many different ways that people can get into systems. So we have to protect those. Okay, and then we also have like just distributed inventory. So organizations always are seeking to optimize our costs, but they need to continuously do this, especially into the future. So they need to look at storage, they need to look at how can our goods be distributed in the most effective way. And all of this has to be planned. Like where are we going to situate our products? How can we reduce the cost of delivery? Those kinds of things. And as like things progress, we have things like inflation, we have fuel costs that go up, we have all kinds of costs that go up. So the distribution cost factor does fluctuate. So in the future, it will as well. And that's why we have things like forecasting and demand planning that's going to help us plan ahead for these things. And then again, security measures, like I was saying, we need to ensure that all of our cyber networks are protected. um, Things like the software that we're using, can we actually protect those? Because we are in a digital era, and it is very difficult for us to actually um, like capitalize on all these different platforms if we aren't protected by them. So we need to ensure that anything that we use online, they are safe and we are able to use it and we're able to incorporate it into our processes. Because if we do evolve alongside technology and especially artificial intelligence, it gears us towards a future where there are more efficient processes. Like think about how AI benefits you on an everyday basis, and what was like life like before that. So you have to admit that it has become more convenient. Technology also has become more convenient. Like having a cell phone is so convenient. Having a laptop to go to campus with is more convenient than not having one. So we have to admit that technology, artificial intelligence, the digital era is maximizing the daily lives of people, and also in the same breath the functionality of businesses, supply chains, logistics. So the ability to use those things and to incorporate it into our systems is an advantage. But also, we have to be wary of the cost factors. We have to be wary of cyber attacks. We have to be wary of how we're using it. But of course, staying away from it is has worse effects. So say companies don't maximize their technology at all, it has more severe effects. Okay, so these are just things we have to stay in line with. Now, moving on to the last learning unit. Again, if you have any questions about supply chain, just put it in the chat box and we'll go through it after. Okay, now, moving into project management, this is so easy, and I'm not going to get too in depth with project management as well because I understand that you guys already do project management. So, a lot of this should be like it should just come to you so effortlessly, but we're just going to go through the basics so that you guys are well prepared for it. Okay, so remember, project management is there to help us navigate ourselves through projects in business. So, um, essentially, it is there to optimize and improve. Um, like whatever we're doing, like if we have a specific project, it's there to optimize our project. It's there to optimize the tasks and the resources that we need for projects. So project management is there essentially to help us just coordinate our projects, coordinate our tasks, and to ensure that everything is running smoothly as possible. So, what you do need to know is what the difference is between project management, programs, and portfolios. Know the differences between these, okay? Because they can come in short questions, they can come in multiple choice, true and false. And usually they're like 2 marks or 5 marks, but it's marks that are so easy to get. So know what a project is. A project usually has a specific time period because we obviously want to complete a project within a certain time frame. So we do have a start and an end date. Okay, we have specific resources, we have human resources, we have a budget, we have quality standards, all of those things. Project management is the management that goes into the project. So it's the managerial activities that help us stay in line with time constraints, quality, quantity, to ensure that all our processes actually support the project. So anything that we are doing is actually going to enhance the project and not delay the project. Okay, so that's what project management does. We have programs. So this is a collection of projects. So it is open-ended because a program can consist of endless projects. But of course, the project in itself has the time frame. So just because a program doesn't have a specific like end and close, an open and close, the project will have a time frame. Okay, and you do get a program manager. So program manager is one step higher than a project manager, and that's because the program manager is overlooking the program. So it's overlooking the collection of projects. And then portfolio, easy, is a collection of all the programs involved. Okay, so please know these is so easy. It's easy, easy marks. And then we also have our project management body of knowledge. Again, you guys should know project management so well because you are doing a whole project on it. Okay, so I'm sure project management body of knowledge is also like integrated into like your project management module. But of course, it includes aspects. So remember, the project management body of knowledge is basically just like it just tells you how to manage projects efficiently and effectively. Okay, so it's like how can we integrate certain factors, like how can we manage the scope, how can we manage our time, how can we manage our cost, our quality, our resources, our communication, any risk factors, all of those things, because all of that does exist in a project. Okay, but we need to know how we can maximize and how we can use all of these factors efficiently. So that's what our project body of knowledge tells us. It's just information and knowledge that we can use to help us design and implement projects. So it just gives us intel on how we can maximize our projects. Now, something important we have to go through is the project life cycle. This is very important. And of course, you will be familiar with this from um, the project management module, but we'll go through it again. So we have 5 phases in the project life cycle. We start off with the initiation phase. This is the beginning phase. So this is where you've now identified like a possible solution. You know what your project is. You know what a challenge or the opportunity is. You have a project sponsor, so you have someone that is providing you with the financial means to sustain your project. You have the costs worked out. You have an estimation of how long this project is going to last, and also the risk factors, possible risk factors. Now, during this initial phase of a project life cycle, this is like your brief planning. So it gives you an overview of everything that is going to be a part of your project. In the next step, we have a more planned, a more formal design of what our project is going to look like. So this is where we start to identify our project objectives, our risk plans, our quality plans. We look more into the cost factor. So here is where we actually design like a proper document telling us how we're going to go about the plan. What is our key deliverables and what are our requirements? So what is the things that we absolutely need for this project? And this is just putting those plans into action. So once we have this planning phase all done, we have exact information. We have information on finances, we have information on resources like equipment and tools and materials. It gets more in detail. Okay, so in the initial phase, it's like our brainstorming. We do finalize things in our initial phase, but in the planning phase, we sort of get more intricate with it. We get more in depth with those things. Okay, now in the planning phase, we can use different tools to help us assist the team. We can also use this to help guide the project. So we have something known as a work breakdown structure, a Gantt chart, and a critical path method. So a work breakdown structure begins with you deciding what each task is. You can even look at who is going to be responsible for each task, or just looking at within what category does each task follow. So for example, if you are manufacturing a certain product, like the first task, maybe you have to look into the packaging. And maybe there's mini tasks in that packaging. So it's breaking down the workload. It's taking each task that you have and it's breaking it down even further. This is a very excellent way of planning because it tells you exactly what is involved in each task that you have to do. And if you have like a step by step, or not even a step by step, but little categories and little um like time frames of each thing that you need to do, it helps you to reach your goal a lot easier than just having like just a category of, okay, we're manufacturing this packaging. You know, it's too basic, so we have to break it down into smaller bits so that different team members can take on different projects and it can help us get to the end of that project quicker. We have a Gantt chart. Okay, our Gantt chart also shows it's an illustration, and it shows us a start and an end date and also the task that is at hand. So it's very nice at showing us like a duration of how long each task is going to be. Like it clearly shows it to us in some kind of chart. So it makes it easier. Like if you needed to see how long you had to complete a task, it'll show you how long you have. And a critical path method, this is like a mixture of both because it is an illustration of everything and it also gives you like time frames on each thing. So it shows you the start dates, it shows you the end dates, and it shows you how each task is connected to the other, and also duration of how long those tasks take. So if one task is delayed, it delays everything else. And that's why when we use a critical path method, we always ensure we stick to the time frame because we don't want to delay all the other dates. Okay, because that means we'll have to alter the completion dates of the project. Sometimes it happens, like especially if you are buying resources and you have to wait on resources, like sometimes logistics can be delayed, or sometimes like there's other elements that are delayed in our projects. So these time frames is what we like to stick to, but it doesn't mean that you always stick to those. Okay, so those are three ways that we can plan, proper planning. And I'm sure um, you will use these like in other projects that you have, like especially WOL, in the WOL module when you have to work together in a group. This is nice to use because you can see each task, you can assign different tasks to different people, and it's a lot easier to work with. The implementation phase, so this is where our plans are now executed. So we had a formal planning of our project. Now we're going to execute it. So now we need to assess what needs to be done, who's doing what, and we need to coordinate. So it also involves controlling a lot of our processes. Now, sometimes you deviate from a plan, sometimes someone is delayed and they don't go according to our project plan. But the implementation phase is going to bring us back to center. So we're also going to be now exposed to certain risks. When you are planning something, you may foresee certain risks happening, but it's only until you implement your project that you start to see the actual risks that can happen to your business. So The implementation phase brings up a lot of stuff. It brings up a lot of feedback that we can use. So, especially in the production process, if you think about it, the implementation phase will be the actual production of our products, right? And only during this phase can we see, like, is this process actually working? Like, are our strategies actually making sense? Are the people actually doing what they should be doing? So that's why our risk plans are updated in this, because now we can see for a fact like how things are playing out. Okay, so our implementation phase brings a lot of stuff to light. Then we have the monitoring and controlling phase. This is also there to monitor performance, to look at controlling like quality, things like that. It also gives us an idea of what we need to change in future projects, and also if there are any changes to be done, this is where like you pick up on that. So you can pick up on errors here, you can pick up on if there is a deviation from the plan, and then you could take action in the steps. So it does include like inspections, it does include like switching up a few things just to make the process a lot better. So again, if it is a production process, for example, and you're producing a product, your monitoring and control phase will be like the quality control, will be like the monitoring of your equipment, the monitoring of how quickly you're actually producing your products. And the last one is our closure phase. So this looks at like coming to an end of our project. It's the feedback that we can put back into the project, like a future project. It's looking at like our performance so far, giving like feedback to our project sponsors, also just looking at other documentation that needs to be signed off. So maybe contracts that need to be ended, project deliverables that need to be signed off on, resources that need to now, like if there's any waste that we've incurred, we have to get rid of that, those kinds of things. So this deals with closing the project and yeah, finalizing all the details. And that's just a summary of everything. So initiation is what we start off with. We are exploring, we're brainstorming, we have a general idea. Planning is where we have a set plan of action. We are dividing our teams, we are coordinating tasks, we are doing this through work breakdown structure, Gantt chart, or even a critical path method. Implementation, this is where we are actually now moving into executing our plan. Monitoring and control, this is where we are monitoring all our different elements involved in this project and making sure it's on point. And then closure is where we're ending everything. Project governance, so this is where we look at the authority in our projects. So again, there must be an authority figure, an authority head in our projects to ensure that everything does run smoothly. So we do have a project sponsor. This is usually the person that is in charge of the capital that's provided for the project. So sometimes you have a sponsor who gives you the financial means to run your project. So they are the people that require feedback, constant feedback. You have a project committee. So these are usually chaired by your project sponsor. So these are like just some stakeholders that are involved in the monitoring and the reviewing of all the project phases. So they just ensure that everything is also going according to plan. And then a project support office. So this is mainly used in bigger organizations, because these are where the bigger projects are done. So these are your skilled project managers, and these are the ones that are actually also overlooking certain processes, giving our functional managers a little break to focus on their departmental responsibilities. Okay. So these are just our like authority figures. And then we have project information systems. So again, another easy aspect is our project information systems, which just looks at controlling our systems. Like if you think about ARC is where your information is stored. For businesses, they have their own information systems where they can store information. So anything that we have collected from our project, like data, information, anything we've captured, any research, any documents of contracts, things like that, we upload it onto a information system, which makes it easier for us to pull information from there the next time around. So anything, any information that we feel can benefit the next project is uploaded onto the information system. And say, for example, we run the same project the following year, we can always go back into the archives and look at how things were done. So it's a really nice way of storing data. So when it comes to things like forecasting and demand planning, we have information to begin with. Okay, and then some basic documentation that we have to go through. So Project Charter, know what this is, know that it is a document of the scope, objectives, and participants of a project. So it tells you everything that you need to know about who's involved in the project, the outline of the project, the objectives of a project, the stakeholders. It gives a general understanding. Our project plan. So the first one, Project Charter, we usually develop it in the initial phase. Project business plan, this is usually done in the planning process. So it's a part of project planning, and it's also a formal document used to approve and manage all the aspects of the project. So our resources, the delegation of authority, the team, all of that. So it's also very similar to like how the concept of a business plan is you have all your information, all your specifications. A project business plan is the same thing. So it's all the specifications of a project, okay, that is at hand. Status reports. So this is a document that summarizes all of our reports. This is a document that we will give back to a project sponsor. So if you would take a status report every so often, only when there is usually changes in the project, or like if you see like a performance change or something like that. If there's no progress, then you don't really have to do a status report, but this is usually done as the project is going on to give feedback to our sponsors. Lessons learned report. This is something that is used to just ensure that like once our project is over, we compile this report so that we don't repeat the same mistakes again and again. So it's everything that we learned from the project, the do's and the don'ts of the project, and how can we make it better for the next time around. So it just is a basic reflection of our project. And that is all your project documentations that you need to know. Now, again, if you guys have any questions at all, so anything that you want me to explain again, or you're concerned about, or something like that, does anyone have anything? I'm going to leave my email in the chat box. And if anyone needs any resources or any other information at all, then I am here and I will help you guys. So please reach out to me if there's something that you need. I know we went through all of this really quickly, very fast pace, but I'm here to help you if you need anything. So please do ask me questions, or if you would just prefer to email me directly and ask questions on there, then I'm happy to help you. Is everyone happy and okay with everything?
Hi, Kim. There's a
Yeah,
typo in
hi.
your email.
Oh,
Just
is there? Oh
yes,
my
there's no
gosh, I'm so sorry.
23.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, this will be recorded. So if you do want the recording, email me and I can share it with you. Is everyone okay? Does anyone have any other questions? Josh, do you have any questions?
No, thank you so much for this. But I just want to tell the students that they must read their questions carefully, plan
Sure.
out their time properly. When it comes to giving examples, like especially that question where it's like, explain this concept, give an example. I told my students, use a business that you know in detail and then apply that business throughout all your examples in the question 2, whatever it is. And then with the case study as well, read the question, see how much the marks is, and at least you can't leave it blank, because specifically if it's a
Yes.
10-mark question, then that's 20% of your paper gone. And it's very discouraging for us as your lecturers. So please give it your best, read the question carefully, see which function is it. Is it an operations, is it supply chain, or is it project management? Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, guys, please read your questions. Please do the practice questions. They're very, very helpful. Okay. Always use the and application. So always try to give an example of what you're saying. It just also makes it a lot easier to show your understanding. Okay. Even if you feel like it doesn't make sense, just try. That's so important. And then you guys will be fine. And also, guys, please just make your summaries. Use your learning outcomes from your module guide as a guide for you. So learn according to that. Look at those outcomes and then go to your textbook. Make summaries for yourself. That's so important. Don't just learn straight from the textbook. Actually make summaries, because it's going to help you understand what you're learning. So take like key points from your textbook, make your summaries, try to think of examples as you're learning. So as you're thinking about operations, think of an example of like a transformation process. Familiarize yourself with that. And then at the end, do your practice questions. And that will be a really nice way to, yeah, just to see how questions can be asked. And again, if you need resources, please email me or email your lecturer. Is everyone good with the session today? Is there any more questions? Okay. Well, good luck, everyone. You will do amazing. I have full faith in you guys. Thank you, Josh, for coming.
Thanks, Kim.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.